Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of the HR Famous podcast, where we every week talk about, things that are impacting the world of work, HR, and talent acquisition. As always, I have at least one of my counterparts with me, this time out of the DMV, Miss Jessica Lee from the Marriott Corporation. Jessica, how have you been?
What's up? I climbed out of the hole I was in and from out, and I'm here. I'm so tired, though. I have to just tell you, I'm tired. I'm wearing glasses today. You don't usually see me with glasses. It's a signal of what's going on. Not that everyone else can see.
Tired? Why are you tired? That's the question.
I'm just tired. Work is so tiring, but
I it's funny. So I'm going to bring our guest in real quick, and then we can all have this conversation together. So Torin Ellis, masterful D&I Talent Acquisition Strategist, keynote speaker. You can get him at torinellis.com, at Torin Ellis. One of just the most dynamic speakers you can ever have, either at a conference or in your corporation. Torin, welcome to the show.
Absolutely, man. How are you? Thank you for having me. And like Jlee, I too am tired. Just think about it. We got 40 million plus individuals that are unemployed. You got Mike Tyson at 53. He still punches harder than most people in their 20s. And Drew Brees has reminded me this week, yet again, what it's like to have your conversation co-opted, subverted, or absolutely just whitewashed, and to have your voices muted. So I too am tired.
It was funny because I was going to tell Jessica, I was going to say I was exhausted too. Part of it was Torin and I were on the Transform conference this week, and I had to MC, and people always, in fact, Torin, you and I have had this conversation about being an MC. Yeah. It's the most exhausting thing to do at a conference.
All day
because
long. Yeah.
From literally first thing in the morning to the end. And even you have to watch every presentation, go through this stuff. So I was exhausted for that. But then I'm thinking to myself, I'm usually not this tired, but then I'm like, holy crap, with everything going on in the world.
Yeah.
And taking all of that energy away as well. Yeah. I'm completely just destroyed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. No, it's a pleasure to be with both of you, to have a chance to speak with you on the podcast. First time I've been here, so thanks for the invitation.
By the way, shout out to your podcast.
Thank you.
Go ahead, introduce that.
Crazy and the King with my dear pod partner, Julie Sowash over in Indiana. So, yes, we love what we do around the D&I narrative. So thank you for allowing us that brief plug.
Yeah.
Pod partner. I like that. I feel like we don't use that phrase. I like it. Pod partner.
It's free. You can have it. Pod partner. That's my pod partner, Julie Sowash.
My PP.
That's
pod
right.
Partner.
Yeah, we get to that.
Well, yeah. Jessica and Chris and I have been friends for so long. I don't, we probably, that would be an easy partnership to create. That's for sure.
Yeah. Come on. It's helpful.
Torin, so you're in Maryland. We are fellow Marylanders, although you're outside of Baltimore, is it?
Yeah, I am. Absolutely.
In Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah, but when things are normal, every Friday I'm in D.C. I'm at the SiriusXM studio recording my show every single Friday. I try to at least get down to D.C. at least once a week. I have very few clients in Baltimore. So the majority of my work over the last 20 years, honestly, Jessica, has been in DC or Northern Virginia. Literally, I think in 20 years that I've been a solo practitioner or running a shop, I think I know I've had less than 10 clients. It may be even safe for me to say less than 5. Yeah.
Love Baltimore. Yeah. My husband is a Baltimore, he likes to say, so you'll laugh at this and maybe you'll tell me he's right. So he has lived in Montgomery County for most of his life, but was born in Korea. And he's never moved outside of this area, but he tells me all the time, no, I've lived somewhere else. I lived in Baltimore and went to school in Baltimore, and that is living somewhere else. I'm like, no, that's still in Maryland. He's like, no, that's like living in it's just a different place. And is that,
but you know what? But Jessica, you got to ask him, what does that mean? And maybe that's not something we talk about on the pod, but what does that mean? Well, I mean, because again, some people will say in their true fashion, they will say, Baltimore is like, this is a wild place.
War zone.
And
I can say that because I'm from Detroit, or, everyone says the same thing about Detroit. Like you're from Detroit, like it's a war zone. Like you're like, really?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so very similar to what Tim, is referring to. And so, and I frown on people when they say that about my city because, the bottom line is Detroit is an incredible city. And it's interesting for us to even be having this conversation because Detroit in many ways is like a Baltimore. And what's fascinating to me is that I can hop on a plane and I'm in Detroit in an hour, maybe 70 minutes. It's a very similar city. And in my mind, it's like, that's like a totally different part of the country, yet it's only an hour away. Very, very similar footprint. People's perceptions of the cities are the same, and they are both incredible places.
Maybe I need to go yell at my husband to come in here and be part of this conversation. We'll put him on the spot. Let's do that.
Do that.
Well, Torin, you came to Detroit last year and you were downtown, and I think you've been there a long time since you have been downtown Detroit. Like the same thing, I'm sure like people just have a different view of it from the media versus going there, being there, going, holy crap, like this is a modern, kind of a comeback city,
Absolutely. It's a good story. Absolutely.
All right. I want to get into, we have a number of things I want to talk to you about today. One, we were on the Transform Recruitment Marketing Virtual Conference together. You keynoted, I was the MC. And I really think they cracked the code on the virtual conference thing. And I think it's important to talk about just because we went from having all these in-person conferences, and then anytime someone did a virtual conference, it just seemed like just a bad, long Zoom meeting, right? It was just like a Zoom meeting at presentation after presentation. And they did this thing where they did a couple of things that I really liked. One was they had some live presentations, some recorded. And that's the hard thing with a virtual, right? Because there's always tech issues. You had a major tech issue, but ran right through it like a pro. They changed the times up. So I think you had like 40 minutes. The next person coming on had 20, then somebody had 25, then someone had 15, and they just moved it all around. So as somebody watching it, you could never get too comfortable and like, I'll come back in an hour. I don't like what he's saying or whatever, right? Yeah. Like it was constant kind of change and movement. And then in and out with live and recorded also throughout the day. What did you think? I mean, we've both seen a lot, and Jessica, I'll bring you, we've seen a lot of virtual conferences right now. We're going to see a lot of virtual conferences at least through the rest of the year. What did they get right? Any ideas in terms of how they can even make it better?
Well, I mean, shout out to the entire Smashfly and Symphony teams. When you say, what did they get right? They got right bringing me back.
Well, I mean, no, first and foremost.
Yeah, I don't mean that in a braggadocious way, but to impress upon you that they saw something, they heard something. They allowed me last year, Tim, and you were there. You saw this. They allowed me last year to stand on that stage and to use the opportunity for more than just a keynote, more than a message. We raised a lot of money for Orally Cancer Research Foundation. So from that moment, they've always been a favorite in my in my calendar, if you will, in my Rolodex. And so because I appreciated that gesture towards humanity, like it's more than a message. Let's do something. And they allowed me to do something from the stage. And so then you bring it forward to 2020. We're going through all of these iterations. I was originally supposed to do the fireside chat with Michelle Obama's speechwriter, Sarah Hurwitz. We went through the modifications and we ended up landing where we were. And I got to tell you, I was a little like, oh, man, do I really want to be first? Do I really want to be the first keynote? And we went back and forth. But what you said about the agility and the time and just they did not allow you to become comfortable. And for me, I just thought that was an excellent, excellent note of planning.
Yeah.
Wait, can I ask? So I love that you said, Torin, that what they got right was bringing you back, but were they also like explicit with the audience in like why this was important to them and the reason they wanted to have your voice there? Because it's one thing to be like, oh, let's bring the speaker back, but like for them as a company to be explicit in saying this is intentional, there's a reason, and and let's welcome him to the stage, type of things. I'm curious, like how they.
So,
positioned it.
one thing that I say on my LinkedIn profile, Jessica, is that I'm non-judgmental, but I'm absolutely prescriptive. And so when I stand on stage and I speak, I'm always going to speak, a transparent truth. I'm rarely going to be filtered. I'm not raw in that sense, but I am going to be extremely direct. And so one thing that Tom Kenny, the former CEO of Smashfly, what he told me last year when I walked off stage, he said, Torin, I don't think I've ever seen anyone be as in your face and as bold as you are, yet it's palatable. Like you understand how to craft an uncomfortable conversation in a way that I haven't seen anyone else do. And I didn't take it, I didn't get on the plane with a big chest or, a big head or any of that. I just simply said, I thank the Most High. I thank my mother and father. And I just continue to move in the energy and the frequency in which I do. And so when it came to this year, I just think it had everything to do with what happened last year. Everything to do with we see that we are in this pandemic. It's a catastrophe. It's a very, very tough time. How do we keep the microscope or the spotlight on D&I? And they felt like I was the best person to talk about it. We had no idea, 2.5 months ago, when we came up with the title of the presentation, the content of the presentation, that we'd be in this exact moment. And so this exact moment even made it even more imperative that I had a conversation. This is a side note. Tim, I don't even think you know this. And this is a true story. As sure as I'm black and breathing, This is a true story. I wrestled from last Friday until the day before the conference with what I would say. On Tuesday, I scrapped all of my content, rewrote my keynote, and then delivered it at 11 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And when you said I had a technical glitch, you're talking learning new content in 12 hours and then
with no deck.
So
Jessica, that's what happened is he couldn't get his slides to come up. And so he's live, on camera, and the deck you're supposed to have isn't working. And so he just went. And then, by the way, I think it was like 40 minutes and you hit it at 38.
Pro.
Yeah, that's just a pro. That's being prepared.
Yeah.
But you bring up a great point. I mean, they never could have figured out the timing of what happened, which ended up being completely perfect. The message that you brought, and there was one thing that you said in your keynote that I think for me was just like that aha moment, or just one of those things that when you have a great keynote that happens and there's so many pieces that you connect with, and one of it said, like, you talked about COVID and the coronavirus and all the stuff that happened and how organizations literally turned on a dime. But yet somehow with D&I strategy, especially around talent acquisition, we're still trying to turn that corner. We're still trying to figure that out. And so how is the killing of George Floyd and the BLM and all the protests and the energy that we have right now, how is that going to change potentially D&I talent acquisition strategy moving forward for organizations?
I'm optimistic. I operate with a bit of encouragement because, what I think, Tim, is if in fact we really want substantive movement, it will require some degree of sacrifice. And I don't know exactly what that sacrifice looks like. But what I believe is going to happen is that the more individuals join on into the message to suggest that inclusion and representation are important inside of their organizations, it's going to get leadership at all levels. It's going to get people from all levels to say that we cannot continue to do what we've been doing for the last 50 years. If in fact we really want to build high performing organizations, teams, business units, departments, that we must commit ourselves to doing something different. And I'm giving people just a very slight pass this last, 4, 5, 6 days all of the statements that are coming out from organizations around Black Lives Mattering. Yeah, I understand that Black Lives Matter. They've always mattered. But here's the issue. It matters easily on social media with a tweet, with a post, with a press release. But that is about what people have been doing for the last 30 or 40 years, give or take. And so what I want is substantive movement. I want to see substantive effort and representation. I don't want to look at a board of directors and see all white men, one white woman, and no one else of color. I don't want to see that. If the lives matter, then I want to see you putting it into action.
Hey, like you take a look at from the brand standpoint of who's done this right, who's done this wrong, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into all of that, but I know like Nike came out with some commercials right away, and like people just said, "Oh my gosh, this is just don't do it," right? And they had it got so much press. And so one of their board members is Peter Henry. He was the first Black dean of the School of Business at NYU, one of the first Black deans of a business school, major business school in the country. Rhodes Scholar, Stanford grad, UNC football player, like just super brilliant dude. He's on their board. He was on Scott Galloway's the Prof G podcast this week, and he said, "Hey, by the way, 8% of VPs at Nike are African American." 8. So we have work. Now he's like, I'm encouraged because every board meeting, every leadership meeting, we're talking about this. We're moving. We're trying to move this forward. But and he's on the board, obviously. And so, but he's like, look, this is how big of an issue that we have. Now he said as well, he didn't. Because Scott Galloway said, "Hey, are you surprised at what's happening this week?" He goes, "I'm surprised at the timing." He goes, "I would have suspected this would happen about 10 years from now, because when we take a look at demographics, people of color will be in the majority around 2032 based on demographics. They'll be the majority of the entire U.S. population by 2040." He goes, "I would have figured this would happen about 10 years from now." But, hey, it's happened right now. So we knew it was going to come and happen because we see this changing demographic shift in the U.S. that's been happening over and over. And the white dudes who wrote the Bill of Rights and the Constitution are losing control, right? And organizationally, we're going to start to see these changes happen as well. So is there a natural movement that we're going to see in organizations just because of the shift of demographics?
Well, just real quickly, I'm actually surprised, though, not to diminish his brilliance, because clearly it's there, but I'm actually surprised that people are surprised and would say, like, maybe we would have seen this a few years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, because when you look at everything that is happening right now, it is like additive, and it all is sequenced. It is all like these things are happening in sequence very purposefully. And like, if you look at the pandemic, who it is affecting most, from a public health perspective. Then you look at what's happening in the economy and who is on the front line, and also who is impacted the most. Like, it's all this perfect like storm, and it is a complete tinderbox that we are in, that like we shouldn't be surprised this is happening right now. This is like, it was bound to happen with this much explosiveness. So I'm just surprised by that. I have to go back and listen to the podcast now, because I'm sure there was like more context to it.
The Prof G Show and Peter Henry by the way, it's a great conversation they have. I mean, super thoughtful. Both of those gentlemen are around this topic. And they have some really great ideas and things that they say. Torin,
I was going to pick up exactly where Jessica picked up. I believe Mr. George is probably brilliant. I like Scott Galloway's podcast, the work that he does, but I'm surprised that he's surprised. When you see everything that's happening, I take a bit of a different observation on that, because I am watching, and it probably has something to do with his maturity. His maturity may have him a little less connected to millennials or Generation Z. And I'm watching them. I mean, again, I'm 51, so I'm not the youngest person in the game, but I'm still cool enough that I can rock with them, and I still see them. I'm close enough to them. I can emulate a bit of what they do. And so I don't see them as being the generation that's going to wait until 2030. And one thing that you said, Tim, a moment ago, I don't think white men are losing power.
Before we move on, I need to let you know about my friend Mark Pfeffer and his show, People Tech. If you're looking for the latest on product development, marketing, funding, big deals happening in talent acquisition, HR, HCM, that's the show you need to listen to. Go to the Work Defined Network, search up People Tech, Mark Pfeffer. You can find them anywhere.
No. I didn't say. Did I say power? I meant like they're losing the majority.
They may be losing the majority, but even in that perspective, if you're really, really honest about it, they've never been the majority. If you look at populations around the world, the majority of people are people of color. So when we think about this race thing, I get frustrated because I'm forced to have to talk about white and black and, people that are brown. And I get forced into that conversation because of the construct in which we operate. But people of color, darker hue, darker skin, they are probably 60, 70, 80% of the world's population. So I don't believe that they are losing in representation, or maybe they are. I guess maybe they are, but I most certainly don't believe that they're losing power. And I honestly think that, when we have the D&I conversations around, inclusion and representation, equity and belonging, I think it's instrumental and vital that we have the conversation that suggests that it can be a shared experience, that it doesn't have to be punitive. It can be promising. And if we look for the promise in the conversation, I think we can enroll and enlist more people in doing something about where we are.
Can I ask you something, Torin? So to Tim's comment about like loss, what I think is probably true is that there is a perception or a feeling of losing a sense of power and dominance. Whether or not it's real or not is a different question, but I bet there's a feeling of that. So I think that's an interesting nuance. But when you talk, Torin, about like sharing in this, I have a question because I was talking to one of my team members recently, and she is a Black woman. And she was actually saying to me in the past week, she has gotten so many phone calls and people wanting to talk with her and just check in with her and understand. And it's come from a very earnest, well-meaning, well-intentioned place of, I want to understand what your experience is. And it, like, if I'm being transparent, like it's white people reaching out to her saying like, I want to understand, like I'm aware, I'm seeing what's happening. And I've never really thought about things from your lens as much as I am now. And I want to understand. And one of the things we were talking about is that for her, she totally gets it's well-intentioned, that they're coming from a good place, but it is draining and tiring to now like be in this position of, people wanting to share in it and understand. And so I am just I didn't really know how to respond to her. So I let her talk and I listened, but it's got me thinking about like, as people, come in and share more and experience it together, like the burden that we place on people like you or this woman on my team, because that, like that has a toll, in and of itself. So I'm just curious your reaction. And like, if you were talking to her, like, what would you say about like this new burden that she's feeling and like the drain? I mean, we started by talking about how tired we all are. I mean, I can't imagine like how tired she is having to like share that burden now with them and help them get through what they're now.
I'd have less to say to her and more to say to them. To her, I do a lot of listening like you, and we'd be in organic conversation, dear sister, I hear you. Or, if I know her name, address her by her name and to really just kind of respond to whatever it is that she is sharing with me. But to them, I would say, timing is everything. And especially when we've been saying the things that we are saying now, we've been saying them for centuries. But I don't even have to go hundreds of years. I can just let's just go with the first time a tech company put out a diversity report in 2013, I believe it was 2014. We've been saying it for 6 or 7 years. Every single thing that we've been saying for 6 or 7 years. And for whatever reason, it has fallen on deaf ear. You have not found a way to listen to it. You have not found a way to be able to categorize those individuals in Charlottesville as racist. You haven't been able to do that. So you haven't asked the individuals in Charlottesville, well, how do we spend more time getting to know our Jewish brothers and sisters? And how do we spend more time getting to know our Black and brown brothers and sisters and people with disabilities? How do we spend more time like that? They're not asking themselves that. And so they're putting the burden of responsibility on us at a time that we are absolutely hurting. And that hurt, it emits differently. Some are angry and they are, to the extreme of, I want to burn down everything in sight. And there are others that are angry and they want to become an introvert because it's easier for me to not say anything. Jay, I tell you, when I was in corporate America, I would sit, true story, quick story. I would sit in meetings inside of my organization. I worked for one of the largest telecom companies. I had one of the top performing sales teams in the entire country, and they accused me of being ill-timed and too outspoken and too radical every single time. I would ask a question like, well, if they're charging 31 cents a minute, why are we charging 30 cents a minute and we want market share? Why don't we drop it to 28 or 27. Let's make this thing competitive. Well, I didn't understand the whole Wall Street thing and evaluations and all of that. But my point was, I was asking a legitimate question. Timing. My timing wasn't right. So it's about timing. And so for her white colleagues, don't ask her to help you through a situation she's grieving in. Go to your white friends and ask them, why have we not listened to our Black employees? Why have we not listened to our neighbors? Why are we not operating and responding when people have been shot down in the street and accosted in parks and, followed inside of grocery stores and department stores? Why has all of that fallen on a deaf ear for the last 7 years? And now all of a sudden we want to hear it. That's what I would say.
And that's your guy, Torin Ellis, HR Famous podcast. You need to hire him, bring him in, because he brings that every time. And I get to talk to him personally and privately. And we have these kinds of open and honest conversations. And that's just who he is. Jessica, go ahead.
No, it's interesting. So I'm not going to say that this is the case for, let's say, like my colleagues who are calling, my white colleagues who are calling, or her white friends who are calling her. But one of the things that you said reminds me of this idea that, like, if someone is, let's say, reaching out to their, Black friend, Black coworker to understand, in some ways, it, like, you wonder, is that more about themselves as opposed to really wanting to check in with that other person? It's like, how do I feel better about the situation? Or how do I, like, understand the context of where I sit in the situation, and less about, and it then becomes more about them as opposed to about the other person. And so even that action in and of itself is like this interesting, like, reflection that needs to be done around, like, what's my intent? What is this for? Is this to make myself feel better? Or is this like to, care for the other person? So like that place of empathy and really understanding, like, is this about empathy, or is this a selfish, act, unintentionally selfish act is an interesting.
It's an absolute observation. It's a great one. And I'm going to drop a book in right here for your listeners. I would encourage everyone. And when I say everyone, I would encourage everyone to read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I would also encourage everyone to read The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. Two incredible books. One, of course, speaks to white people and their role in our advancing this conversation. And it talks about that, Jessica, how they tend to center themselves in the chaos. They tend to center themselves in the scenario, when all of that energy and all of that empathy and interest should be placed upon the person who has been infracted upon or assaulted. They are bringing it back on themselves. And you find yourself, you're the one that's grieving, and you're patting somebody else on the damn back. I mean, you're giving them and I'm not saying that we should be less than human and less empathetic. And I don't mind if Jessica's grieving or Tim is grieving. I'm sorry, if I'm the one grieving and Tim or Jess talking to me, I don't mind patting you on the back. I love people. I absolutely do. But that book, White Fragility, teaches you, or at least paints a picture of how you can do a better job of being a better ally and not co-opting a conversation or a situation. And then the other book, real quick, Tim and Jessica, is it really just shows you the systemic and institutionalized policies that have been enacted in every area of our life. And so if it's hard for you to understand phrases like pull yourself up by your bootstrap, or just pick up your stuff and move from this side of town to another side of town, or why don't those folks just do a better job of, not being on food stamps and all these other things. The Color of Law is an incredible book to help you understand this thing didn't just happen overnight. It has been built into our system. And I think you said something about the Constitution in the beginning, Tim. All right, I rest my case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so, there is a post that I've seen going around on Instagram that I think captures like exactly what you're referencing, Torin, which is, and I'm guilty of this myself, where I have said the words before, like, oh, this system is really broken. But the reality is it's not that it's broken. It's actually working the way it was intended to. The system was built this way. The system was built this way and it's working as it was intended, not broken. And I think when you think about it,
broken for certain people, but not me.
And when you think about it that way, like it changes your entire frame of reference around like, oh my God, I've been looking at this the wrong way the whole time. Yeah.
And I think, early on, Torin, you had talked about, sacrifice has to be made. And I think, when I take a look at that, like being the person who gets advantage of that broken system, quote, air quote, broken system, right? Being a white dude, especially, a 50-year-old white dude, there just has to be a come to Jesus kind of conversation with myself to say, I have to be willing to sacrifice some of my privilege and all those things that I get and the advantages I get from that system if I want to see the world move forward in a real positive way. And especially organizationally, we have to be doing that as leaders as well. And I think that's the toughest thing to do because it becomes a real personal, decision that has to be made, and it has to come from a position of strength, I think, to make that happen. I do want to get in because, I had a bunch of questions for you and we have, obviously an HR audience, TA audience. So when we talk about, we have so many people cutting right now because of the pandemic. And so one of those programs we know are going to get cut. We know that's going to get slashed in the budget is going to be D&I around talent acquisition and how do we grow, those numbers within the organization. How do you help coach an HR leader, a TA leader to make sure that they can continue to develop and grow and have the resources needed for the right strategies and thrive during this time?
First and foremost, advocate for a person who handles the D&I responsibility, reporting out of HR, but reporting to the executive suite. Absolutely mandatory. That's number one. Number two, that person being equipped, they have the competence and the confidence to be able to go in and advocate for a responsible budget and, an allocation of resources and a schedule of time. We didn't get here. We, as in any individual organization, small, medium, or large, industry agnostic, we didn't get here overnight. And so I want people who are competent and confident enough to be able to evaluate, look, where are we as an organization? Based on all of the work that I've done, this is what I think it's going to require, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever the case may be. I think I need to have a team of 3 people, 5 people, 10 people. I think we need to make some shifts over in recruitment, marketing, and employer branding. We may need to evaluate our technology stack. We should be looking at event curation. There's a variety of different moving parts that go into this equation, but that person should be telling that to the executive, the chief executive officer of the organization, buying for a budget, securing that budget, and then saying, this is what we're going to do with it. This is what you can expect to see in 12 months, in 18 months, 36 months, and whatever. If any organization, in my opinion, Tim, and I don't have a crystal ball, but my opinion is I recognize where we are with the pandemic. I believe if an organization pulls back on their D&I efforts now, and then they need to pull the engine, like starting that, I tore my ligament in my bicep a couple of weeks ago, trying to start a power washer. If they start trying to pull that thing, I feel like they're going to tear their ligaments and they're going to be in pain until 2025.
For sure. So give me a strategy. We talk about wanting to attract a more inclusive workforce, actually hire a more inclusive workforce. If you think about all the strategies that you have at your disposal, where do most organizations, what are they missing on right now? What's the big miss that a lot of the organizations are missing, that they could just easily say, nope, you just got to focus here, turn this on, and you're automatically going to put yourself in a better situation?
They are missing, they're putting too much emphasis like VCs do in pattern matching. I think that most organizations, they get this little cadre of schools. I'm going to recruit from 10 schools, or I'm going to recruit from 7 schools or 50 schools. I believe at one point a couple of years ago, Tim, EY to me had one of the biggest calendars of, colleges that they went to. I think it was like 200 colleges that they went to. But even still, there's 5,200 and something colleges in the country. And so why are we pattern matching? If in fact we've been recruiting from the same institutions, academic institutions, for the last 20 or 30 years, stop investing your money there and let's start creating relationships in new places where we have not went to source talent, where we have not created relationship, where we can support the academic syllabus. We can get inside of their high schools and start to bring people in that we know we're going to need 5, 10, 15 years from now. I just believe that we've become a little too lazy. We become too robotic in how we go about building high performing teams. We're not willing to break the mold and get radical and get outside of that. And so we continue to either get what we've been getting or use the same excuses that we've been using. And neither of them are acceptable if in fact you are a professional. I believe if you are a professional, then you should be continuing to push yourself to be able to do better. And so with 5,000 schools, that's just one piece. That's just the academic footprint. There's certainly other areas, but that seems to be a large portion of how people recruit. And so I wanted to attack that piece.
What could be interesting is like now might actually also be the right time to quote unquote disrupt that a little bit, because college recruiting is not going to look the same just because of, let's say, COVID and the pandemic. Like you're not going to be on campus. You're not going to be in a big hall doing a job fair, shaking all those sweaty collegiate hands that you shake when you're in that kind of setting. And so, it'll force people to like tackle it differently, use their budget differently. You're not going to be flying all over the place and talking to the students in that same way. And so it might be actually good timing that like it just forces you to look at
not just might, Inside Higher Ed had an article, I want to say it was April of this year, and they talked about, different sects. They talked about a number, I think it was like 40%, don't quote me, Jessica, but I think the number was like 40% of people that have already been on the campus are not going to finish their senior year this year. They're not going to come back. They're going to be remote. 40% of high school students that are Black and brown are delaying going to college this fall. They're just not even going. 40%. So what that means is, okay, it may not have an impact on your recruiting strategy today, but it's going to certainly impact your internship strategy 18 months from now, 24 months from now, because all of the cycles have been shifted. So you're absolutely right. This is the time where we are sitting around and we should be looking at every single aspect of what we do to build teams. And what I tell people, Tim and Jessica, is if in fact you do D&I better, you do all of your recruiting better. You got to know that. D&I doing that is not just a benefit for D&I. If I go through and I evaluate how you show up on academic institutions, or I look at your technology stack, or I look at your messaging and that calendar of production, if I'm evaluating all of these various components of building your team, then I'm helping you optimize all of your process. That's why I try to tell people it's a promising conversation. Don't be afraid of what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you the truth. It just may hurt, but it's going to hurt in a way that makes us better. It's going to make us better, and it's a promising conversation. It's one that I really, really do love. I absolutely love talking about strategy and people and storytelling. That's why I've been in this business through a bubble burst in 2001, an economic collapse of 2008, and I've never thought about putting up a white flag. I've never said I want to surrender. I love engaging with people and saying, we have something over here that we think is going to be beautiful for you and your family. Do you want to take a look at it? That is an incredible feeling to be able to help people with that. And I think we are in a time right now where we can all have fun and rejuvenate the work that we do in our space.
Well, Torin, I want to thank you, one, for sharing everything that you share with us today. How can people get a hold of you, find you, that they want?
So I'll make it really simple across all of social media at Torin Ellis, TorinEllis, across all of social media at Torin Ellis, and of course my website, torinellis.com.
And for those SiriusXM listeners, you're on
Sundays, 1 p.m. Eastern, channel 126, The Urban View. Channel 126, The Urban View. I've been on SiriusXM now in my 5th, going in my 6th year.
Amazing.
Nice. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. Totally appreciate it. You're my friend. I love you. I love what you bring to our community and the world. And so thank you so much for doing this. Jessica, thank you as well for coming on. I came into this a little tired. I'm leaving more like energized as can be.
I feel better too.
Torin, you might have just given us all of your energy. You might need a nap now, but thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, HR Famous Podcast. We are out.